taking the time to join us tonight. My name is Owen Bly, and I'm the Dean of Admission at Providence College. And tonight I'm joined by two of my colleagues. I'll have Christine Brown introduce herself in just a moment. And then later in the presentation, we'll be joined by the director of the parent program at Providence, Jackie McKay, who will share some information on the resources and expertise that await you should your student ultimately enroll at PC. Christine and I just left campus about an hour or so ago, and I have to say the energy is steadily growing this week. While some summer will have a few work study employees and students doing research, today we saw the orientation leaders beginning to move in, the dream coaches getting ready for transitions program. There's a few pre-orientation programs going on focused on service, on recreation, one on faith life. And that momentum is definitely building towards Thursday when we'll welcome the entirety of the class of 2029, all 1,200 strong. And move-in day is always one that I personally look forward to, and I'm sure most families do as well. It's filled with excitement, but also sometimes it can have some anxiety and some apprehension. And those same emotions are the ones that can sometimes find their way into the college search as well, though often flipped and experienced by both sides. And so what we hope to do over the course of the next 30 to 40 minutes is provide you with ways that you can successfully manage this process in a way that positions your student well for admission, but also ensures an experience that we can't guarantee it's going to be perfect, but it'll have many of the common road bumps removed from them by perhaps our sharing them with you ahead of time. And so to assist me with that goal, I've asked one of my colleagues to join me, and I'm pleased to introduce to you all Christine Brown.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here with you. As Owen said, thanks for joining us. And I am Christine Brown, Senior Associate Dean of Admission here at PC, a proud PC alum who's worked in the admission and college counseling field for many years as a member of our admission staff here at PC, but also as a college counselor in high schools in Massachusetts and also outside of school. I have loved working with families and students and guiding them through the college search and application process. So tonight we're going to cover some of my favorite topics. First, we hope to cover what to expect as you enter the application process. Certainly, I know you have been doing a lot of work up until now, but as the school year gets underway, hopefully we can share some tips that are applicable no matter which school your child is applying to. I'll share some guidance on approaching the process as a family and as a team. And then Owen will walk us through some tips for going through the Providence College application process. And as he mentioned, then Jackie McKay, the Director of Parent Programs, will join us to share the resources that you can expect for you and for your students once they do arrive here at PC. Just a note of housekeeping, tonight's conversation is being recorded and we will be emailed to you in the next several days. The Q&A function, the question and answer function, is activated, and Owen and I will be taking turns replying to some of those questions, and we'll also save others to discuss live when we've got some time. So let's jump in. I'll turn it back over to Owen to share parts of the process that you should be thinking about now.
Excellent. Thanks, Christine. Before we dive into the specifics of the application, I think there's a few things that are kind of relevant at this stage in your students' year and college search process, and a few things that you may want to make sure to kind of be mindful of. The first is to think about kind of more enhanced visits or perhaps in-depth ones. It's possible that you've already done the tours and information sessions, a very solid and introductory place to start your exploration. But I think institutions like ours and many others have likely started to offer more in-depth ones for students who are beginning their senior year. And I'll just add that the time as an admitted student goes incredibly quickly. And I'm not trying to say that there aren't things that are important in the fall of senior year, but in the spring, you find yourself competing against prom and against award ceremonies and all these different things that make scheduling additional visits really difficult. So if you find that your student has a more flexible fall where maybe homecoming is the big thing, but there's plenty of weekends open, shift some of those things kind of to the fall and away from the spring. Think of yourself as already having been admitted and really kicking the tires so you can do that more in-depth look up front. For us, we have kind of two main opportunities: the day in Friartown program. The dates are all available for registration right now. It's about 15 different dates throughout the fall where your student will be sitting in on classes and they'll be talking one-on-one with professors. They'll be going around campus with their student host, usually in a group of like 3 to 1. So they can kind of have group conversations. But the Day in Friartown program is an excellent one. But then also look towards fall open houses. At an information session, which you maybe have already done, you kind of learn the basics of the institution. At fall open house, for most places, all of our department chairs are going to be there, all of the different programs and resources and advisors. So you can really take that in-depth look. It might be extra important if you have kind of a front runner and you're thinking about early decision, which I'll talk about in a bit. Then maybe it could be that really key visit, but also it's helping you have more information for the spring as well. The other thing that I think sometimes gets perhaps a little bit put to the side in this process around this time of year, but it is a perfect time to start thinking about it, is the financial aid process. And I cannot emphasize enough that the financial aid application process, it happens at the same time as the admission process. It's unlikely for them to intersect. While we're reviewing applications, our colleagues in financial aid are also reviewing their applications. But what I would absolutely caution is to not wait to find out until you're admitted to apply for financial aid. The deadlines are really, really important. And I feel like in the last several years, with issues that we've had with the FAFSA, hopefully you're not familiar with them, but for those who maybe have other children in college, the FAFSA has kind of had some problems in the last few years. And with that has come grace from many different financial aid offices and extending deadlines and continuing to do so. But I'm finding that more and more schools are going to start holding fast to the deadlines in the way they have in previous years. And that's not us saying that if you submit all your info on January 16th, like you're on a wait list. This has nothing to do with Providence, but I feel like just from a mindset standpoint, the financial aid process has kind of been put on the back burner in the last few years. So here to remind you that it's really important. So right now, take some time to lay out what the different requirements are for applying for aid. We prioritize the need-based financial aid process, but we do also have a really robust merit scholarship program. And so thinking about kind of both sides of that affordability conversation, whether the need-based financial aid requires the CSS profile or the FAFSA, but also on the merit side, though this isn't Providence, there are some schools that require you to apply for need-based aid to be considered for merit. So do you need to have a FAFSA to receive an academic scholarship? I would really strongly encourage you to start kind of working on maybe a grid or a list of requirements for all the different schools that your student is currently working on their Common App for. Most of these applications won't open for a little bit. Usually they'll open in October, sometimes November. It depends how this year goes. And if you're looking for more in-depth information on this, we will have a webinar in October specifically on financial aid. But I think beginning to kind of familiarize yourself with some of the vernacular and some of the requirements would be a really strong start for where we are right now.
Great. And if I can just follow up this conversation about merit scholarships, just to answer one of the questions that we've received already, in terms of positioning students to be more likely to receive merit scholarships, I think it does really take some research on the front end, looking at college websites, seeing what their range is in terms of offering merit scholarships. In my time as a college counselor, I remember talking with families who are surprised that their student who was so strong academically didn't receive a full tuition scholarship from X college or university when that college or university never even handed out full tuition scholarships. So it's important for you to be mindful of what a school is offering and where your student falls in that applicant pool. Where are they falling when it comes to the average admitted statistics, and understand that merit scholarships are often given to those students whose academic profile falls above those average invited statistics. But let me move on to some more tips about the deadlines. And I think that it's important for you to treat deadlines as though they're earlier than they are actually published. So I often tell students, set every deadline in your head as 2 weeks earlier, okay? As they start to work through the Common Application, they're going to find that the page required by each separate college under the My Colleges tab will take a little longer than expected. Some questions are quick and easy, but this is also where the students will uncover those additional essays. We call them supplemental essays. So it's really important to not save these college pages until October 31st. You've really got to get started on those sooner. I also think it's important to pay attention to the high school's process. So if the students' applications are due on November 1st, their high school might be requiring that they request their transcripts by October 20th, let's say. So being on top of the high school's process will ensure that things go smoothly. When it comes to how the timeline plays out and the list, the college list, I think it's really important to stay open-minded and flexible. There's this need to want to solidify the college list by the time we get back to school in the fall or by October 15th. But know that once decisions start coming back, once notifications start hitting students, there might be some modification of the list. So depending upon the students get from their early action or early decision applications, they might be adding schools in November or December. They might be taking schools off the list in November or December. Know that schools have January and February deadlines, so be prepared to adjust the list even into the winter months. I'll change gears a little bit to talk about how I think it might be a good idea to approach this process as a team. If you can think about this process as the first lesson that they're going to learn for the rest of their lives, I think it can really help the student. The stakes are higher now, and certainly deadlines mean something real. Okay, they can't just email a teacher or a counselor and ask for an extension. If they don't put their best foot forward, they could fail. And you're probably thinking that you'd rather help them over that hurdle than deal with the fall. But truly, the next step from here is the real world. So it is a really good time for them to learn that actions have consequences and that their future is their own responsibility. I think if you step back a bit, you might be surprised by how they rise to the occasion. I'd also encourage you to allow the students to take the wheel. If there's something that you have questions about as a family, certainly you can call admission offices or financial aid offices during business hours and while they're at school. But we all respond to email and sometimes faster than we respond to voicemails. So encourage your students to email their admission counselor, email their financial aid counselor, and know that most schools offer that contact information right on their websites. The other piece of them being responsible for this information, um, It has to do with the way that they get information from us once they apply. And once students do apply to schools, they are then sent emails that give them information on how to set up their portals. So their Providence College portal or their ex-university portal is the place where they will be able to sign in, see if their application is complete, if all of the pieces of their application have been received by the school, and then eventually to check their decisions. Okay, gone are those mailbox moments where they're looking for the mail after school. Everything is checked through the portal now. Financial aid even is checked through the portal. The students are going to be getting emails letting them know that they have an update on their portal. So not only do they need to be checking their emails regularly, they also need to be keeping track of the portal websites and their login information for each of those portals. I'd also encourage families to reserve one night each week to talk about the college process. You don't want the college process to fill up every interaction that you have as you are ships passing through the fall of senior year. It can get stressful and cause families to avoid interacting at all. So pair your college talk with Taco Tuesday or with pizza night, and that's it. Take small bites and give more time for everyone to digest in between. Okay, one night a week is enough. Also, trust the school to do their job. This might be your first time through the college process in recent years, but the counseling staff at your child's school does it every year with hundreds of students. So, as long as your child's account, so whether your school uses Score or Naviance, as long as their accounts and their college lists are up to date, you can expect the counselors to do their jobs. Recommendations and transcripts will all be submitted by the stated deadlines. Don't feel like you need to check in. And if you are unsure, have your child check their portal. This is where they'll see whether we've received everything or not and can follow up with their counselor or teacher when they're back at school. The part where you might need to drive a little bit more frequently is, of course, with the financial conversation. As you heard from Owen, there's a lot going on surrounding the FAFSA and those deadlines. The cost of college is intimidating, and students are just learning the value of their hard work through part-time jobs. Um, and the other things that they're involved in. So I would say it's far better to have the financial conversation at the front end of the search than to get into that dream school only to realize that it's not feasible. There are a lot of different tools that you can use to help with this process. So whether that's a net price calculator, and that's something that every college website has. There's a website called My Intuition, talking to admission and financial aid professionals to get an idea of what that final cost will be. These will all help you in that process. Finally, I would say not to let this college search process become the one goal of senior year. It's just a piece of it. Owen mentioned before the many exciting things that happen throughout the year and certainly at the end of the senior year. I want to encourage you to make a decision to go through this process the way that your family wants to go through this process. Whether you want to talk about it on the sidelines, at games, or at dinner parties, and whether your child wants to post about it on social media, where they've been accepted, where they're attending, all of that is up to you as a family. You don't need to keep up with the Joneses. Let me push it back over to Owen to talk a little bit more about Providence.
Excellent. Some really, really helpful advice, and Christine worked outside of our office, as she mentioned, for a number of years with students and families. So definitely has that firsthand advice. And what she said about those other folks who are helping you in this process, the school counselors, I can't kind of emphasize enough how much they are a resource on your side, and how closely we work with them. to make sure that your students' applications are complete and ready and everything. And so when it comes to the application, I want to spend a few moments to just talk about kind of ways that your student can best position themselves. And I won't necessarily say that these are secrets or anything like that. We'll happily share them with everyone. But I do think they are things that a lot of times people just don't think about. And so hopefully you having this information to perhaps on that Taco Tuesday conversation, as Christine mentioned, share with your student, it can help them kind of best present their application when it comes to our colleagues on the committee. So I'll start by just kind of making one overarching comment, and that's that much of the work that they are going to be kind of evaluated upon has already been done. They have completed 3 years of high school, and certainly we may look for first quarter grades or those full first semester grades, but they've already gone through 3 years of an intense curriculum and 3 years of learning how to be a student and growing and how to approach certain coursework. And so what remains now is certainly a strong finish to that senior year, but really, how are we going to kind of bundle not just the academics that we've gone through, but also all of the involvement and the commitment and the ways that I've shown that I'm passionate. How are we going to put that into one package to share with what may be a stranger, whether it's here or elsewhere? We hope we grow to have a relationship with you, but you really need to make sure that that application is getting across all of the great things to someone who may not know you. And so a few things that I think are helpful to keep in mind. The first one is largely optional, and for us it is optional, but supplemental essays. So much of the attention, or I guess I could say the hype, in this process goes to the college essay. And we hosted a webinar where there were almost 700 students logged into it a few weeks ago to learn about the college essay. And that is important. The personal statement is a big thing, but I would argue that the supplemental essays they're a close runner-up, if not tied. And there's a few reasons for that. A lot of institutions will make them optional. Ours is optional. I always suggest you have to do it. And it's for a fairly selfish reason, if we're being honest. When I'm presenting applications to my colleagues, to be able to talk specifically about the academic area that a student is interested in, or to be able to recount the story that a student tells about the tour they took and their tour guide and how it resonated so much, or for them to share their excitement having spent 2 minutes looking through the course catalog and picking out a few electives that really sound interesting to them. It just allows me to make a much stronger presentation to the Committee on Admission than a Common App, which a lot of times can just kind of read as a list. To talk specifically about Providence really goes a long way. And so this isn't a hidden gotcha. Like, you can still be admitted without doing the supplemental essay, but I will say that I really strongly recommend it, despite it being optional. The same holds true with the nursing supplemental essay. So, for students who are considering applying to the nursing school, there are many pathways to being a nurse. Ours is a BSN, but there's accelerated programs. There's masters in nurses. You can even do them through different kind of community college programs or public colleges, all different ways to be a nurse. What we want to know is, like, why are you called to nursing? What is it about our program? Why do you want to be a healer rather than a practitioner? What about the liberal arts and nursing excites you? Spending some time to really kind of make your case to that school and reference why it is that you're so excited about them. Trust me, it'll go a really long way. The other thing that I think students don't necessarily think about early enough is the question of test optional. And test optional as an idea, has been a bit of a roller coaster through the past few years. We did it about 18 years ago, I believe, and have been that way ever since. When COVID came around, you saw pretty much everyone go towards it. And now some are going back, some are affirming it. But it's important for at least us, a student, to understand a few things. One is that the bulk of our review is that high school work. It's almost 70%, it's 72% of our applicants who are not submitting test scores. And so a test score will play a much more supporting role. Um, they may kind of play the same role as a letter of recommendation or an interview where they could give you that tip factor, but it's not going to make or break an application. And I can maybe not speak for all my colleagues, but let you know that this is similar at many institutions. Perhaps they don't have an applicant pool that is as test optional as us, but if they are saying that they're test optional, you have to trust that what they really want to do is spend time with your transcript. Sure, certainly, you can still submit them if you want, but for us, if you say no, you don't want your scores considered, we're breezing right by that. There's no extra essay. There's no majors that you need test scores for. We don't even use them for scholarship consideration. So really, the question that your student should ask themselves is, do you think the test scores represent the type of student that you are? If the answer to that is yes, then they should go ahead and submit them. But if there's even the slightest bit of pause, if you all logged into the College Board website and were disappointed, then test optional may be the way to go. Another thing that's going to need a bit of conversation about this process is the topic of early decision. For anyone who's not familiar, early decision is an application round that is binding. So if a student applies early decision and they're admitted, then they're automatically a member of the first year class. And so the expectation is that the student withdraw their applications elsewhere and enroll. At many institutions, including Providence, it is the best path towards admission. And so it lets us know kind of who is most interested and take that into account. Once we complete our academic review, we have a lot of students who academically look the same, and we're kind of shaping the class and building different cohorts and looking for different involvement. And early decision is one other piece that we can use to understand that a student is really interested in PC and take that into account. Now, as I mentioned, it's binding. So there's a few things that kind of go along with that. If you decide to apply ED anywhere, you will sign an agreement along with your student and the school counselor. And so it does take a little bit of a conversation to make sure that you understand the commitment that is being made. Now, I'm not here to tell you it's a legal document or anything like that. It's taken seriously. We released, I believe it was three students, two or three, I don't remember exactly, but two or three students this year who they were looking at their financial aid package and we were looking at the financial aid package and we just couldn't come together. And we're not going to force someone to come to our institution, but if someone does ask for a release from ED, we're going to talk to the school counselor. And school counselors often want to make sure that the financial aid kind of has been exhausted and that all the options have taken place. We don't want any student to enter this lightly. It's the best path towards admission, as I mentioned. So our acceptance rate for overall, so for early action is usually about 45, just under that percent. With early decision, our acceptance rate's about 75%. So the averages are very similar, but when it comes to the competitiveness of the pool, that does kind of provide a leg up for students who are interested in it. We enroll about a third of our class through early decision. So the other caveat I'll kind of add is that we're not a school where you like need to apply ED. If your student knows it's their first choice and you've done your research into the financial side of things and you're ready to make that commitment, and then certainly it's a good option, but some schools will admit like 70, 80% of their class ED. That's not the way that we handle it. And there's other ways that students can kind of express how interested they are in PC. So I would always encourage a student to reach out to their counselor. Right now, we are in the process of booking visits at about 900 different high schools throughout the world. And while they're there, we want to have a conversation with you. We want to answer questions. We want to move you closer to understanding if Providence is the right fit for you. If we're not coming to your high school, or your student's high school, I should say, then feel free to shoot us an email. Make sure they're doing it in a genuine way. I don't know how it's like a little sense you have, but like I know when I'm getting those emails that perhaps ChatGPT wrote, or where they really those especially those emails where they really don't care about the answer to the question, but they're doing it because they want to make a point of contact. You can just tell those. Make sure if you're reaching out and trying to kind of demonstrate your interest that you're doing so in a genuine way. There's schools that will consider this. We love to hear from students and want them to reach out to us, and certainly in the admission process, we'll then go to bat for students who maybe we had a great conversation with, or they really nailed their interview, or we just remember meeting them at the college fair and that spark when we told them about a program and it fit them exactly. So looking for those ways to kind of use us as a resource, but also enhance your application can really be quite beneficial for a student. So those are a few pieces of the application where I think some thought needs to go into what is available and how a student can kind of best position themselves. And so what we have been doing throughout the past 20-25 minutes or so is giving you ways to kind of prepare yourself to have that conversation with your student. And in a few minutes, what we'll do is we'll come back and do some Q&A because I'm sure I see the number and the Q&A button. I'm sure there's questions on things I haven't talked about, and we want to answer everything that you can. But just as we have been preparing you to engage with the admission process, we're pleased tonight that one of our colleagues who plays a similar role preparing parents has joined us. And so Jackie McKay has been a member of the Providence College community and really such a valuable one, helping provide parents with the information that they need. And so as she prepares to welcome a new group of parents this Thursday to campus, even though she's already been working with them, we asked her to come and share a little bit about kind of the work that she does that you can expect for your students' 4 years with us. Hi, Jackie.
Hello, Owen and Christine. How are you this evening? Um,
Excellent. Thank you so much.
well, every time I hear, I learn a little bit more about the admission process, something new. Well, I'm delighted to meet with you all this evening and talk with you a little bit about my role as director of the college's parent and family program. And, I was thinking today about this evening's program, and I thought, here we go again. Students are about to move in, classes starting next week, and we have a whole new group of parents and families about to start a new journey. And I'm sure as you begin this journey that you're dealing with a whole range of emotions as you work towards helping your students in their journey to find the right college fit. Now, Owen and Christine have been providing information about ways to support your student during this process. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit and talk about that issue of support, but support once students arrive on campus. So in a sense, we'll be talking about the same time about next year, what's going on, okay? And I'm going to be focusing on a little bit of highlighting our resources for students, resources that we have in place for families, and how we work together, the college and families, to help students to become all that they're called to be. I think at PC, we really work hard in helping to create a strong sense of community. And I have to say, as a Catholic Dominican institution, we certainly are rich in traditions, okay? And we know that traditions are important no matter what the setting, okay? They're important for lots of reasons. But most of all, they bring us together as a community. They remind us of what we care about and what we value most, our friar family. Now, when we talk about creating that sense of community, we model this from the very beginning when students first arrive on campus. And they'll be moving in, our new students are moving in on Thursday, and lots of going on. Besides the physical activity of moving in, most students are meeting their roommates for the first time. Families are meeting one another. Students are getting a sense of their new setting. So there's lots going on, lots of emotions, right? And when everybody is settled in, we get together for a mass of welcome. Our community comes together and we welcome our parents and our families, our students, not only our friars, but we let parents know that when your student becomes a friar, you become one too. And that massive welcome is really, it's one of my favorite events on campus. We have a special blessing for families. It's just a beautiful ceremony and mass. Then the very next day, we have a academic convocation. And that's a more formal kind of program in which we officially, again, welcome our students and we welcome our new faculty members as members of our community. As I said, it's a formal program in that faculty are dressed in academic attire. We have a ceremony, we have a speaker, and it really does, I think, help students begin to see themselves as part of the larger community. And one of the things that I always think about as we come together for that event, that it really does reinforce the idea that no student has to make this journey alone, okay? It unfolds in the company of family and friends and helpers. And certainly, when students need assistance, the first person they reach out to, particularly during those first couple of months when everything is so new, the first folks they reach out to are their family members, right? And that's important and that's good. We want that to happen. But we also want them to develop their own support networks on campus. There's a book by an author by the name of Ken Bain, and he wrote a book called What the Best College Students Do. And one of the things that he talked about was that students who reported having made the most of their college experience were students who early on identified a go-to person, someone they felt comfortable going to when they had a problem or concern. And that go-to person might be a hall director, might be a chaplain, a dean, a faculty member, okay? And one of the things that they found was that students who identified this person early on were more open to taking risks and open to new experiences because they had that extra measure of support. So with that in mind, I want to share with you some of the resources that we have, very briefly, some of the resources that we have for students, both academic and non-academic support services. And we really do pride ourselves on our resources. We have a Student Success Center, which is really a hub of academic services. Academic advising takes place there. We have a writing center in which students can send in a draft of a paper, and within a few days, they'll get a critique of that draft. Tutorial services, accessibility services. It really is, I like to think of it as one-stop shopping at its best, okay? We have our personal counseling center, and we have a whole range of counselors, the whole range of expertise, addressing lots of different needs. And one of the things that's unique about our center, our personal counseling service, is that we don't have a limit on the number of sessions that a student can have with a counselor. Some students see a counselor all 4 years that they're here. Other students may just need to see a counselor a few times. Maybe they're dealing with a particular situation and they need some help, or particularly for new students dealing with stress around settling into their new environment. So we really, our counseling services are very well received by students. A Tarico Career Center. And when we think of a career center, we often think about the work that it does with upper class students, helping students to deal with post-graduation plans, interviews and resume writing. And certainly that's an important part of that center. But also helping our undergraduate students, our younger students, helping them for students whose interests may not have crystallized, helping them to take a look at their own interests, their values, and beginning to put some of those pieces together. They have a program that's really popular with our younger students is a shadowing program where they can shadow an alum who's working in a field that they're interested in. And shadowing can take place during the spring break or Christmas break. They try to connect students with alums within their hometown area. We have a major minor fair, which takes place at the end of September. And it's like a big shopping mall where students can go in and talk to faculty who are involved in many different disciplines, talking with upper class students who are majoring in those particular areas. And they have workshops before the major minor fair, how students can make the most of that experience, and then helping them to process what they've learned as well. We have a care team, which works with students who may be struggling academically or personally, reaching out to them, providing them with individual means of support. And certainly our chaplain's office is very much involved with students on many different levels and day-to-day life experiences at PC. So we have wonderful resources on campus. But sometimes the challenge is students making use of those resources. If they're not used to reaching out for help, it can be unsettling and an uncomfortable process. When students come to college, they hear a lot about the need to balance academic and a social life. Well, I think balance is also a key word for families, having a sense of when to step in and when to step back, which is not always easy, right? Through the years, I've had a lot of parents ask me, once my student's in college, how much should I be involved? And we know there's no one size fits all to that question. Different students need different levels of support at different times. And we know the more you know about the college experience, the better you'll be able to assist your students and to support them, particularly when they are especially stressed or dealing with new experiences. So I want to talk with you very briefly about some of the resources that we have in place just for families. And before I begin that, just to tell you a little bit about myself and my background. I'm a clinician. I was director of the counseling center for many years. I've been in administration and student life, in assistant VP in student affairs. I was an academic dean. I teach in the graduate program in higher education. So I've worked with both students and families, which gives me an opportunity to come full circle in a sense and to help families particularly engage with the institution to help their students to make the best of their experience at PC. So what are some of the resources that we have in place? Well, we have a parent family website, which is really the hub of information for families. And we have information about all the resources that I've just talked about, links to college offices and departments, college event information, policies and procedures, talking points. For example, we all want to make sure that our students are safe and make good decisions around safety and security concerns. And so there's some talking points of how to talk to your students during the summer months about some of the ways that they can make good and wise decisions around those issues. There's an ask a question link. Families can send me a question, and within a few days, I'll get you an answer. And just this morning, I had a parent send me a question about commencement, wanting to know about the schedule for commencement in May. And I'm thinking, here we are just dealing with September and classes beginning. lots of times if parents send me a question about a policy or, for example, um, questions about how can my student change major, I'll let this parent know this is the policy, but if your student wants to follow through, this is the officer, this is the person your student needs to connect with. Because we want to put responsibility on the student for follow through. Our mantra for our program is we want to help parents to help students to help themselves. So we want to give you the tools and the resources to help your students to make good and wise decisions. We have a parent handbook, which was received national recognition a few years ago now. And it takes a month by month look at the first year of college for new families. And for each month or cluster of months, it addresses predictable issues that students are dealing with at that time. And then some tips and strategies for parents to support your students in dealing with those issues. We have a parent family blog, and I always tell folks I do not like to blog. I hate blogging, but it's something that's very popular with families. It's a good place to learn about PC, sharing insights from students and parents, other parents and administrators about life at PC. Actually, I think one of my most popular recent blogs was about Finnegan. Finnegan is the new pet therapy dog that the counseling center has, and just started his work this past spring. So I was told a blog and interview concerning Finnegan got lots of calls from students wanting to connect with the pet, with our dog. We have a language bank, and for families where English may not be a primary language, we have about a half dozen faculty and staff who have volunteered to translate parent program information to these families. Parent e-communications. I'm kind of known as the email lady on campus. About once a month, I send an email to families, providing and my emails are long, they're about 4 pages long, providing information about upcoming events, change of policies. And I get information from all across campus, from academic affairs, student life, billing, the bursar's office. So you'll always know what's going on. And parents tell me that lots of times they'll send some information to their students about what's on the email about an upcoming workshop or an event that they think they might be interested in. So again, there are lots and lots of ways that we support our students. We support parents as you work with your students, because I think when I think about our partnership together, 3 words always come to mind: support, challenge, and celebrate. You know, celebration is easy, right? We can celebrate when students call home, they've made a new friend, or they got a good grade in a test or a quiz. The challenge and support can sometimes be a little tricky for families, trying to find that sweet spot, how much support and how much challenge, okay? And so that's where we can work together. So I am delighted to share with you our programs. And I know that the year ahead, you have lots going on. And I know that we are here for you. And I know as Owen and Christine have talked, sending them your questions. And please feel free also to connect with my website, send me questions. I wish you well this year as you work and support your students to help them find their best fit. God bless. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jackie. How fortunate we are as a campus community, and for all the parents, guardians, and other adults helping students through this process, how fortunate they are to have you as well. Um, and so, as we kind of suggested at the beginning, a number of questions have been coming in, and so there's some that are multiples, bringing some kind of themes to light. And so Christine and I are going to answer those now, where we received multiple submissions on them. But also, if you have other questions, please feel free to continue sending those in, and we'd be more than happy to help. There's a few kind of follow-up questions about early decision, and in particular about the financial aid aspect of early decision, as well as the difference between ED1 and ED2. And so I can let you know that the difference between ED1 and ED2 is a fairly minor one. ED1 is a November 1 deadline. ED2 is January 15th. Early decision one, which again, we're talking about the binding one, means students have kind of applied for admission and are considered, and if they're admitted, it's binding. ED2 many times is students applying for the first time, those who perhaps started their college search a little bit later, or who are perhaps adjusting their list, and maybe based off some early decisions, Providence has risen to the top. It is also the case that students in ED2 are sometimes those who are deferred at early action. So if a student applies early action, the non-binding option, and they are deferred, then they do have the option to switch to ED2. And so they would be considered in that round afterwards. The questions about financial aid and early decision, there's really two main things to keep in mind here. One is that as far as our financial aid packaging goes, it is exactly the same regardless of what round a student applies. So you're not going to receive less financial aid, neither merit nor need-based aid, by applying ED versus EA. However, the thing that you do perhaps lose by going early decision is the ability to compare all the different financial aid packages. When a student is admitted through ED, they're expected to withdraw their application. And so you're not going to be able to see how perhaps 3 other colleges that you're applying to are shaping up to be financially. And we do a really good job with our financial aid. It's really competitive out there, but we recognize we don't for all students meet 100% of need, and there are sometimes options that are a little bit more affordable for a family. And so that's something you're going to want to keep in mind with early decision. Again, we're never going to hold a student to it, but you want to make sure that it is the right fit. The last thing, which Christine kind of alluded to, was the net price calculator. It's really, really accurate as long as you put in the right information. And I wouldn't take it as like a binding letter, but make sure we're at least in the ballpark. It doesn't mean that we won't work with you afterwards. We work with many students throughout the winter and spring on their financial aid packages. But if it's so far apart where you could never see it working, then perhaps ED may not be the best option. There's a number of questions about interviews, so I'm going to throw it to Christine to add a few more kind of quick facts about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Owen. Certainly, lots of nuances here with the interviews. And the way things work at Providence is first and foremost that they're not required. If a student does want to do an interview, we have the opportunity for them to do that both in person on our campus or virtually. And there's another option that I'll talk a little bit about as well. It's important for you to know that it's not a negative if a student is not doing an interview. But if the student does choose to interview, it becomes a piece of the application. It becomes a piece of the puzzle. So similar to SAT scores, for example, if they are there in the application, we will evaluate them. If an interview is there as part of the process, we are going to evaluate it. So our students who are applying to Providence will either get the opportunity to have a conversation with one of us as a staff member, with a member of our senior class, the senior admission fellows who are an extension of our professional staff and are trained to have conversations with our accepted student, or excuse me, with our applying students. And then the third way is by submitting a short video. We've partnered with a platform called Glimpse, and students can submit a 60 to 90 second video helping us to get to know a little bit more about who they are. So that's all something that the students can access as they're applying. And I always want to point students and families to our website. The personal interview portion of our website, I think does a really good job sharing with students what they need to do to be prepared for the interview and really encouraging them to do their homework on the front end. Hopefully, they visited campus if that's possible for them, or at least they've done some research and have an idea of what they want to learn from the staff member or student that they are speaking with, or have really put some thought into what it is they'd like to share as part of their application. Is there anything I've left out from that interview portion?
I think you've covered many of them. There were a couple small things that I answered through text, but excellent, excellent information. One other kind of common theme that's coming across is with regard to a student choosing their major and the impact that might have on the admission process. And so with Providence, a student selects one major. And so that is how they are considered. And so if you are to be admitted, it is to that program. We work in a way where a student, for the most part, is admitted to Providence. So if you come in as a history major and decide you want to change to finance, you're able to do that. If provided you maintain you have a 2.5 cumulative GPA, there's some small nuances to change your major when you get here. But for the most part, from a culture standpoint, students have access to all 53 majors. The only exception is nursing. Nursing is a direct entry program where you need to apply into it to ever study nursing at Providence. And we recognize that it's a much more selective program as well. And so some students may find that Providence is of equal or more interest to them than a career in nursing, but they still want to apply into the nursing program. And so I can let you know that there's kind of different decisions that a student can receive when they apply into the nursing program. Students can be admitted. Some students will be denied, and if that happens, it really is the case that they weren't going to be competitive for any program at Providence. But then when a student is deferred, we do at times give them two different kind of responses. One is that they are deferred with continued consideration for nursing. So if we know we have those limited 90 seats and we want to make sure we're being respectful of the students in regular decision, and so we sometimes hold off on some offers in the early round. So we will defer students to see how the entire pool looks. And students are still in consideration for nursing. But then there are students who are deferred who are not going to be considered for nursing any longer. And for those students, we let them know that nursing is out of the question, but does Providence matter more? And you could change to the health sciences major. You could change to psychology. You may have a wide range of interests. So there's different ways to kind of approach that as well. Christine, what do you have next?
Yeah, thanks for sharing back over to me. I will um, take on the questions about how do we find out if your school is visiting the child's high school, the student's high school. And there are a couple of ways that you can find this out. I would say the most efficient way is to have your student look at their account that's coming from the school counseling office. So Naviance or SCORE, there should be a list of schools that have booked appointments. And we've been doing that over the past month, booking our fall travel appointment. So all of that should live in those systems or maybe be announced from the school counseling office as the weeks go on. However, your school counseling office prefers to get that message across. Also know that if the student is in our system, if they have visited before or connected with us before and get emails from Providence, if we're going to be at their high school, we will send an email a few days in advance, just giving them a heads up and hopefully reminding them of the time that we'll be there, and hopefully we'll be able to see them.
Excellent. I'm gonna do a little rapid fire to close us out. There's a few kind of additional questions that have come in, and so quick question about numbers. This year we have a freshman class of about 1,200 students moving in, and while we don't know exactly what that number will be next year, we're typically somewhere around about 1,200 to 1,225, and so total campus population of about 4,600. Few folks logging in late. Sorry if we kind of cut off your dinner or you're just getting home from work. For those of us kind of working their way west in the country, this session is being recorded. And so a recording will go out to all registrants by the end of the week. So you can certainly feel free to watch Christine and I once again. And regardless of whether it's through the recording or kind of here tonight, please know that this isn't the end of the conversation. We really kind of pride ourselves on the counseling side of this role. And so myself and my 17 colleagues really look forward to working with your student. We tonight wanted to give you the resources to kind of know how to guide them, but encourage them to take that step in the way Christine mentioned, but also recognize there's tryouts. There's all sorts of things going on. And so if you need a little more advice, reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help. Christine, any other questions you see? Kind of, there's a lot of them, but I do want to be sensitive to our end time as well. All right, I think we're good. So thank you all for joining us tonight, and we recognize what an important life decision this is for your students, and do not take lightly the trust that thousands of families put in Providence College every year. And so if we can be of any assistance, please don't hesitate to be in touch. Thanks again for spending your evening with us, and have a great night.